Happy afternoon, everybody. This is Lori with Tug of Heart. I'm here with my little brother, aka my twin Leroy. How you doing, Leroy?
Si quieres hablar con Leroy, marque uno.
Well, it's a little hard to be angry when you're with a clown or when you have a clown for a brother. But today, nonetheless, we're going to talk about anger. So this past week, probably like the last few weeks, I've been feeling this a lot. I've been staying off social media a little bit because I feel like there's a lot of just tension there. And they're not wrong to feel tension, but it did get me thinking about, I guess, kind of, groupthink. And as a group, if you want to group all the groups together, anger seems to be increasing. And especially with social media does not help. The news does not help. I feel like these are, they're generating anger. They bank on it, literally, both. And so in light of that, I wanted to spend the day or the time today, Leroy, talking about anger and kind of hoping to frame it from a mechanical point of view. This is a little takeoff from when you were talking about the Renaissance heart and kind of thinking before you jump into anything or interact with people, thinking what it does for your heart and how it impacts theirs. And so I guess the way we can do this is you could tell me your initial thoughts about anger, and then I'm just going to I'm just going to ask you some questions about it for some my own personal knowing and kind of the areas where I struggle with personally, if you don't mind.
Okay, I think right now, right? But before we get too far into this, thank you, Lori. That was a beautiful opening. Before we get too far into this, I think right now is a great time. You couldn't have been more timely with your topic, and I didn't have anything to do with this topic. Thank you for bringing it to the table. Right now, a lot of people are angry. This 4th of July celebration has got a lot of people, a lot of senselessness going. And, it's different because we have so much, because of this podcast, time is recorded a whole bunch more. So it seems like we're barely starting to stomach, not even stomach, but we're barely starting to park the frustration and the anger from Uvalde, Texas. And before we can even really find any place to reason that or park it, so to speak, we have this. And so we're angry again.
Right.
And anger is, I have to think, it's probably one of the most expensive things there is, because it's absolutely useless. We can be angry, but anger doesn't change things. Anger actually brings to the table knee-jerk reactions, and what we need is well thought out care. The time to be angry is when this troubled young man had put things all over social media. I mean,
and people probably were. Can you just reframe? You're talking about specifically in Illinois?
Correct. Chicago, the Chicago, Highland Park, the 4th of July massacre shooting. We're angry about so many things, and the truth is it's very easy to be angry about what we see in the world, but yet we miss it in our own world. We miss it. It's a lot easier to look at things out there and just develop an emotion, and that emotion will give it the name anger. But this father, this was an ongoing thing from 2019, and the father actually took him and before we pass judgment or anything, there's people are angry. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the one trying to, rehab your child in this case, the family is trying to get through to him, somewhat concerned about him. There's just anger. And I don't want to misplace my anger, or even I don't even want to have anger, but it's frustrating, especially because we don't have the facts. We don't know so much, but it's easy to anger. But to kind of jump this off, I have to tell you, anger's useless.
I commend you for saying this because I think it's a trend now. And I think for a long time, people have kind of gotten away with this thinking where there's a kind of righteous anger and then there's a bad anger. And I would say very far and few between, there likely is, but I don't think most of the people I know operating in today's world know when they've crossed the line between one or the other. And I think a lot of times it's easy to react strongly with our words, with our retelling of the stories we hear of this, right? I heard this, well, I heard this, because somebody has publicly declared the outrage. They use titles like the outrage of what happened, the anger, and then they'll go on and say, it's because this. So by extension, we're angry also at this group, or we blame this, or we blame that. Blame and anger go hand in hand. And so you take that feeling of, I won't say righteous anger, but it's a justified anger that this happened, right? And it's so easy to say, by extension, let's all look this way in anger. And so people are guided very easily when they're angry because they're not thinking clearly. One of the things that you said is, this is what happened, the father this, and then you said, we don't know all the facts yet. Right there is the pause that I think needs to happen before anger, because we don't know all the facts. And what happens is if we just let other people feed the facts to us, we have lost a little bit of thinking for ourselves. And I think anger quite often is a secondary emotion. There's something else we felt before that. And then our response was anger, right? So it could be fear, a helplessness. I think for me, it's a lot of, I feel very stifled and helpless and paralyzed. And it makes me angry that, inability to control what's happening around us. And, but I think you hit the nail on the head when you say we don't know all the facts, because even inside out said, based on your last talk, do we at least know the facts within ourselves? Do we know I'm angry because this makes me afraid? It makes me scared. I'm angry because I have already been pressed to my limit with illness or financially or in marriage or whatever it could be, with your own children, fears people may have about their own children. And so this just stirs up other underlying things. And then we are angry. And what about having that look inside to know what's what? So I wanted to ask you, and you and I haven't even spoke this week. So this is all, I'm just kind of bombarding you with this, but I do know when push comes to shove and in the heat of the moment, you're a pretty clear thinker. I trust you for that. And that's why I brought this to the table for our talk today, because when I'm angry, I do get paralyzed. I disappear. You know that. Not answering the phone, not making calls, because I'm just like, but I know you're able to function. So I think the one healthy thing I've done in terms of the heart is reach out and start asking you. So I would start by asking you, how would you dissect this? How do you unpack it? What do you like? How do you even begin to kind of process this and make some kind of a mechanical choice to do this through the heart? If anger is a part of it, accept that, but diffuse it so that our response isn't a response of revenge, anger from revenge, anger from I told you so, wrong anger. What do you?
I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to preface this by saying that this is just me. And right. I learned something this week about me.
Mm-hmm.
As I watch this news unfold in what would be, everybody's trying their best to celebrate, and the celebrations are getting harder and harder to come by. There's a lot going on, a lot of, different challenges, and it's really undeniable. But let me tell you something that I learned about myself, Lori.
Mm-hmm.
When this happened, and it kind of unfolded on the news, and it was just like, wow, first you're just kind of taken back. My wife lived in Highland Park.
I know. And you have friends there, right?
Correct. And I mean, and they were late. They were late to the parade, and they sit on the regular in front of that pancake house, the original pancake house, right, where the windows were shot out, and they were late. They were running late. And my wife was visibly shaken, and she was really, this penetrated her.
Right.
She recognizes the streets. She recognizes everything about that place. And the first thing you feel is sadness.
Yes.
And sorrow. The problem with that is that sadness and sorrow, they don't get good mileage. They're not, you can't do a lot with that. So myself, sorrow alone makes me feel helpless, and nobody wants to feel helpless. So you want to feel productive, and sorrow is an unproductive emotion. So we make the leap from sorrow to anger.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because we feel as though anger is productive, but it's not.
Well, it does feel like energy for sure, and energy to me equals. I'm following you. I'm just having you baby step this.
So for me,
like,
again,
that does feel energizing, right?
Again, this is just me, but anger is the antidote for sorrow.
Okay.
So now it's like, what's the antidote for anger?
Okay.
Probably understanding. And so when I felt myself, and I'm upset, not because I have ties to Highland Park, but because I see my wife distraught. I see just the pain in all of these people, and I immediately start to feel angry. And then I literally, but I know anger is also useless. So I have to take a step back and say, let's kind of get everything out. Let's find out. And let's be grateful that it wasn't worse. And that's a really hard thing to say, because how can you?
Yeah, for whom?
How can you give thanks at a time when we just lost 7 people? But the gratefulness kind of subdues the anger. Like, what we didn't lose more, and so it's kind of if you will, I mean, it sounds crazy, but in my head, which is probably also crazy, it's a series of antidotes. Sorrow is subdued by anger, and anger is subdued probably by understanding and a sense of being grateful. And so there's this kind of steps to get through it, and it doesn't make it any easier, and it doesn't make it any of the other emotions invalid. I'm just saying that for me to be angry is that's not productive.
Right.
Because anger, if you just let me finish this one thought, Lori, anger also takes a tremendous toll on your health.
Yes.
So to just be angry is, it's devastating for our health.
So I'm just going to ask you this, because I really want to give the floor time to you on this, because I'll be frank with you, if it's okay. You seem in your life to have come from being a little quicker to anger to takes a whole lot more to get a rise out of you. I see you nod your head when somebody's picking, trying to make you upset, and calm and you're like, we don't want to do this, very different person. So I'm going to continue asking if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I hope that it's helpful.
This is my experience. I think it will be for me because I think I can have the appearance of calm, but my anger will be kind of an anxiety. It'll become an anxiety, which I suspect could be as dangerous as that anger you're talking about. So when you're taking the steps to kind of slowly diffuse, like let's take a certain order of processing, or if you want to call it ordering your emotions to be the most useful and to remain the most heartful in responding to this, could you step from anger to understanding somewhat? But could you somehow make a conscious choice to kind of keep that energy and resolve that makes anger seem all right on some level? Can you say, okay, I'm calming down with understanding, but I don't want to lose that intensity because this is worth being intense about? What do you think about that? Or is it all or none?
I don't know. I think that it's a very individualized thing. I mean, again, all I can say is that I know for me, anxiety is something that I don't want to say struggle with, but I definitely know what anxiety feels like. And and different things bring on anxiety. So what I do know is that several episodes ago, you and I, we were having a discussion, and I talked about the importance of inventorying your surroundings. So now when it comes to anger and you say, oh, well, you're slow to anger, and I am completely different. And the reason is because if I inventory my history, I already know that I will get through this. Now, there's going to come a day when there's something I can't get through, and that will take me and it will remove me, at least physically, from this earth. And I don't want to get too crazy, and I'm not trying to, but I know that if I go through the inventory of my history, this is something that I will survive. Number one, because I wasn't there. Number two, because if I look at the emotions, I just have to look at the remediation element for each one of them. And I can tell you for sure, from when it comes to me, the remediation for anger is understanding.
I think that's going to be its own topic. I just wrote that because I think what we are talking about in terms of anger is how can you convert it to remediation? Because another thing, and I'm going to turn this right back to you, just like the rest, there's this tendency of people, and it's because a lot of younger people have a lot more voice with less experience, and that's okay. I accept that's where we are right now. There's platforms created for young people that amplifies their voice, but it can't amplify their experience. And so you hear a lot of this being passed along. If you're not angry, you don't care, as if the alternative is apathy, right? So convince me or explain to me how you have come to be calm, but you could still be effective at remediation in that without having to be outraged. If you're not outraged, you don't give a bleep. You have to be outraged about this, because we do hear that over and over.
When we're young, I say we because now I'm acting as though I understand about other people. When I was young, my anger, my outrage, these are the moments in my life when I am forming an identity. And so it's kind of like, is the spaghetti done? We'll throw it on the wall and see if it sticks. So I mean, you try different things. You try, literally, you try to discover your passion by being passionate about different things.
Yeah.
Whether it's, civil injustice or senseless crimes or spirited political debate. we try different things and we're really try to voice our opinion, because what we're trying to do is not convince others, but we're trying to convince ourselves that that's what we believe. For me.
Right. That makes sense.
So, and that's why I was angry. And then, but as I got older, maybe I didn't get older. Maybe I just got more tired, but it became, okay, why? What did this do for me? And then it became, okay, there's a time to be angry. And the time to be angry is when there is a threat of harm to myself or my loved ones.
Immediate.
And that will bring me, and even then, immediately I'll be angry that there's a threat present. But the antidote for that anger is solving it. How do I solve that? I mean, what is the threat? Financial? Is the threat physical? And so you start to identify. I start to identify the threat, because when I can identify the threat, now I can subdue the anger. And because for me, it's the solution for most things. If I'm sad, why am I sad? Okay, maybe I need to sit and think about these things. Maybe I need to grieve.
Be sad. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to apologize. So you just start to find the solutions. And again, and at another point in time, we may want to just talk about it. But when you inventory your history, if you don't, I would encourage it, because when you look back, you can get through most things.
We're here, right?
Right. The fact that we're here so far, we're batting 1,000 on our ability to get through, trauma. The fact that we're here.
Right.
So that, I don't know if that really answers it, but
it actually does, because the thing that I'm getting from what you're saying is, it's so good. But like all things, because of the time we have usually for these talks, it's like just breaking the cusp of what I'm hoping to understand about anger. And one of the things I was thinking when I'm here reflecting on what you're saying about being young, and then I think of myself when I was younger. When I was young, I was quick to anger, but one of the things was, a part of me, I have to believe today, enjoyed being angry, because a part of me felt really good at it. I was good at it. And I equated anger with a kind of toughness, and I liked the feeling of being tough. The thing that changed for me with age is that I can't necessarily say I was, in a healthy way, productive or impactful when I was angry. The other thing, when you were saying about inventorying our history and this idea of forming an identity, right? And when we're forming an identity, this is just a thought you triggered. It's not so much a comment on what you were saying. We don't want anger to be our identity. And for anybody who I think makes an argument that there is a good kind of anger, that comes from your point of view and an assumption that you're right about principles in life in general. I also want to point out that, because people will be quick to say, what's the commonality with all these tragedies is guns, right? Well, not at the last parade. Or, and I don't want to make it about that, but my point is just that, no, the commonality before that is anger. And so nobody is addressing that, and people will be quick to say it's mental illness. Well, then we may have like almost an epidemic of this mental illness going around that we may be stirring up. What do you say to people who equate anger with power, with the only way to be heard? Nobody's been listening, so I am going to just burst through people's personhoods, literally, to let them know how angry I have been. So now they'll hear me. And there's a glory to it, right? When they report on it.
This is going to sound a little weird, but I'm going to sacrifice my own experience.
Okay, yeah.
so that and hopefully other people will relate to it. Anger is really a void of solutions. Mm-hmm. For me. Mm-hmm. So when I was a young kid and I was really into boxing, that was my craft. And right. and I met up with this young man, and we're friends to this day. You know, three different occasions. Him and I were paired. When I say paired, we were dueling. Right. You know, and we were giving it all we had 3 different times. Here's the funny thing. Very formidable opponents. I mean, equally yoked for sure. I mean, we both came to the table prepared. Right. And I remember them saying, like, you know, you gotta get angry. Imagine somebody is coming after your mom or your sister, or, you know, and turn that into something. Right. And the very first time that I met up with this gentleman, I was victorious, and I had a unanimous decision over him. Went the full distance, and the second time I met him, I was also victorious. And the third time I met him, I wasn't angry. We went to the movies the night before we met up to battle. Yeah. We went and the reason I wasn't angry is because I knew I had the tools. I knew I had the solution. I was in possession of what I needed, and I won the third time. And so it was a good experience, but it wasn't. I would have been angry, or frustration manifests itself as anger, but I wasn't frustrated. I was very relaxed, to the point that, hey, let's go watch a movie. And we're young kids, and we're talking 14, 15 years old. But I mean, you can do a lot of damage as a 15-year-old, especially, you know, well-trained, you know, 15-year-old. But for me, it was like, the only reason to be angry would be if I wasn't in possession of the tools, the solution, if you will, that I needed to execute my craft. Right.
Do you think if you just keep cranking it up a notch more competitive, and it's hard for you to imagine, because I know we're talking like Olympian candidates at this point when you were that age, but at some point, don't you think that anger would become detrimental? Because there comes a time when that craft does rely on finesse. And
100%. 100%.
Because the thing I find, and my correlation into day-to-day life here, is that when I am angry, I'm very clumsy. You know, not physically, but I'm not. But it could be that also. But we get very reckless with our words, with our actions, with our thing. We're not thinking of how we're moving through the air, just like fighting, like any kind of sport or anything, right? You lose your rhythm completely.
Fast forward it to the point in which I had a track car, and I was on the track, you know, road course car, probably a little bit more dangerous. And you have to be calm, because when you're on a racetrack, they use terms like red mist, you know, and you can't see straight. You know, they got this guy in front of you, and you want so bad to overtake him. Not that it's going to change your life, but you want to overtake him, you know, because, well, that's what you're there to do. But you can't lose sight. You can't start getting angry and sloppy and taking unnecessary risk. And there's a point where your equipment can only do what it can do. And without getting into it, I mean, your tires will only hold you to a certain point. And when they let go, you're off track. When you're off track, I mean, you're just hoping that it ends well. So again, you have to be very calm. You know, your solution isn't in the, clenching the steering wheel. It's in the very relaxed sawing of the wheel and shifting the gears and RPMs and just keeping it in line and very calm. And that's where you overtake, which is certainly emblematic of anger. You can overtake somebody on the racetrack by remaining calm.
Right. And so like when people get into, the proverbial ring to fight with people or to do damage to people, they do it with such anger. They just like you could go off the track. They've gone off the rails, literally. And what you're left with is collateral damage, and you're not in that race anymore. You've left the race. You've caused a lot of damage, but you did not get to be a contender. So you made this big, you drew attention because of your anger specifically. And that's kind of what you meant to do. But you have made a kind of agreement, whether you were conscious of it or not, to just trade in your ability to interact from here on out. To make that one point, you'll be cut off.
I'll tell you something unique about my experience as a boxer.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I was 15 years old, I was what they called an open class fighter. I would give up age, I would give up weight, and I'd give up experience. So it really, when the national tournaments came, Golden Gloves, Silver Gloves, ABF, I mean, we're talking Junior Olympics. When these episodes came and you were paired up, I mean, it wasn't uncommon for me at 15 to have somebody 35 pounds heavier than me, probably 10 years older than me, or 15 years older than me. That wasn't uncommon. And what happens is that when you get into these competitive things, it's always the cool head. It's always the one that is in best control of themselves. Because the truth is, in competition, you're not in competition with anybody. You either have the skills or you don't. You're in competition with yourself in delivering your abilities in a meaningful way in the ring.
Well said. I love that. Would you say this just as an aside? UFC, does the cool head prevail in that when it's all mixed arts?
It is, but the scary part, and I was about to finish this, Lori, is that you are not going to be the most popular. It's just like nobody's really interested in watching The Real Housewives without the conflict or without the inebriation and the throwing of wine glasses. They watch it because of the conflict. We like that. Right. In boxing, I mean, I'm telling you, this gentleman and I, and we are friends to this day. Matter of fact, he sent me a beautiful 4th of July note, and very nice. So we still get along very well. But we were at the movies. We become friends. But that doesn't sell tickets. What sells tickets is these two guys with their dukes up at weigh-ins, trash talking each other and being held back. And I mean, that's what people love, is this. So on one hand, we hate when we see something like this 4th of July shooting, but on the other hand,
we keep looking.
We are glued to anything. It's like we want it crazy, but we want to dictate how crazy it is.
Whoa. Mind blown. I'm going to call it there, because say that one more time, and then that's that. We want things crazy. We want that outrage, but we want to dictate it.
Yeah, that's right. We want crazy on a tether. That's what we want.
Yes.
because we love crazy. We do. We love it. Who doesn't? We can watch tennis, but who doesn't love Andre Agassi?
Yeah. John McEnroe.
John McEnroe. That's who I was thinking of.
No, yeah, back in the day, right?
We love auto racing, but the car crashes. We'll go on YouTube and look at how many channels are dedicated to car crash compilations.
Can I just tell you something? A little confession here. I just realized I have been feeling kind of wounded all week about anger. And I just realized last night I was watching the best fight scenes in movies. So yes, I didn't even see an overlap there or the irony in doing that. Yeah. I'm openly, gleefully searching for the best fight scenes. Oh my gosh. Okay, so thank you for joining us. Leroy, thanks for just letting me just ask you the questions. And I, especially without you knowing where I was coming from, I do think that you're a good point of reference for this. And I think we're going to have to find a way to extend this discussion, because we always reach this point where we get to we see that something could be done, but we never quite get into the now what. So maybe we'll try to do that. For those of you that joined us and like this, you can physically like it by hitting the button, and then you can share it for your friends. Thank you so much. We're coming up on 100 episodes here, Leroy, with Tug of Heart. So happy to be with you.
Thank you for including me.
So happy to be with you. It's so right and so happy. Until next time, everybody, please farewell.
Adios.